I was stunned, Mike. Actually, they had like a fan thing there, and there's like 50 to 75 fans there. So you're thinking, oh, geez, one of those days. And when they opened the curtain and kind of between all the fans there, you look in and I saw Jerry Colangelo was there sitting with Sam Hinkie across the way. So I thought, well, that's interesting. We'll probably get him. So we asked for him and Brett Brown and somebody wanted Stauskas. And then somebody kind of offhandedly just says, how about Sam? So we got Brett Brown first. We got Colangelo and Stauskas. And I noticed the PR director, Mike Preston, kind of hanging around where Sam Hinkie was. And I said, well, maybe we'll get him. I said, I don't think so, but kind of hanging around, and like 5 minutes later came walking over and talked for like 8 minutes, answered a bunch of questions, and was actually optimistic. I asked him about Colangelo saying that things could turn as soon as next year, and Sam hasn't been willing to put a time frame on it. And he made some analogies about planting the crops or the harvest, putting the harvest in, and planting the harvest, and the harvest could come in as soon as next year or something like that. So it was, we were very, the story gods dropped one on our lap today.
We planted seeds for a harvest. It's possible that harvest could come soon, was the tweet that you tweeted out a while back there,
yes,
Tom.
Yes, that was.
So this is very interesting, all this today, and because Colangelo had been on a Phoenix station about 2 or 3 weeks ago when he said really the difference between his former jobs and this one is the Bucks always stopped with him. A lot of people just assume that he came here and Hinkie's power has been minimalized to just basically standing around waiting for his day to be, the Grim Reaper to tap him on the shoulder. Are you getting that indication that Colangelo is that much in charge, or do you think that Hinkie still has quite a bit of say?
It's really, really hard to say because, like, if you look at the Ish Smith move, Sam Hinkie could have signed him, after last season, and then the Wizards waived him. He could have signed him for nothing. It wasn't until Jerry Colangelo came in and they gave up 2 second-round picks. And, Sam Hinkie loves second-round picks. They had 5 this year. Now they have none next year and none in 17. So that makes it seem to me like, well, that's a Colangelo move, right? And just bringing a veteran in, they had chances to bring veterans in before, didn't do it. The Elton Brand thing, that's a Colangelo move. I mean, it's possible they're working in concert, but I just don't believe that Jerry Colangelo would take a job where his, legacy, if you will, USA Basketball and the Suns and all that stuff would, and would be willing to sort of defer to somebody else. Not saying that Sam Hinkie doesn't do a lot of work and isn't involved and doesn't have input, but I still think that it's probably kind of the last line of defense is Jerry Colangelo.
So then Colangelo says today, as far as what people think the plan is, nothing is changing in terms of the course. What do you make of that? I mean, is that saying that Colangelo is on board, or is that just saying, hey, look, the light at the end of the tunnel was here anyway, so nothing's changing?
Yeah, it could be a little bit of that, Mike. I sort of wondered about that. I mean, the plan was to dump salary, to get a bunch of young guys, accumulate draft picks, try to get a star, and then build from there. So they're in the 3rd year, and probably the only guy you would say that has a chance to be a star on the roster now would be Joel Embiid, who looks very good and is certainly further along and in better shape than he was at this time last year. But, is certainly a long way from playing 5-on-5 and has a twice surgically repaired right foot. I don't really know. It's a really hard it's difficult to judge because you can sort of draw conclusions in a couple of different ways based on some of the evidence and things that have happened. So, we'll see. I'm not exactly sure, what exactly is going on.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely interesting. And then Colangelo, and there has been some murmurs that, Noel, Okafor, I know ESPN.com did a piece calling Okafor a disappointment. They also put Noel in that category. I guess the two of them playing together, and then you add Embiid in. And Colangelo commented on to that today by saying with 3 centers, if Embiid gets healthy, a trade could be an option. What do you think of the pairing of Okafor and Noel? Has it just not worked? I mean, can it work? Do you see any reason to think that it could work out for them?
Yeah, I asked Colangelo that question that you're referring to, the answer there about, I said, you've seen them play, and from what you've seen, do you think it can work? And he said it's a little too early, and we're going to out. But the problem is they're both centers naturally. Defensively, you want Noel close to the basket because he's such a good shot blocker. And Okafor is a very good low-post offensive player, but not a particularly good defensive player. Doesn't move particularly well, rebound or block shots particularly well. So what you have is Noel out on the perimeter chasing the Kevin Loves and the Rudy Gays and the stretch fours, the David Wests and those guys. So his block shots are down. And offensively, neither ones are particularly – they're both under 30% shots. So they both want to close to the basket. Well, Okafor's got better offensive moves, better touch, better shooter around the rim. So Noel basically scores on alley-oops from Ish Smith and rebound buckets and transition dunks and things like that. And that's pretty much his. That's pretty much the way he scores. So it doesn't seem like it's working, and it's going to work with the two of them. Now, if Embiid could somehow get healthy, I could see Embiid working with Noel, or Embiid even with Dario Saric if he's able to. After the second year, and if he comes over next year, he's more of a perimeter guy. His shooting has gotten better. He's an initiator with the ball. It passes pretty well, etc. So there are some possibilities on all these different guys. But I would say right now it just doesn't seem like something really changes or Noel really develops a 15-foot jumper that is an ideal pairing with Okafor.
So would it be a far-fetched to think that Okafor could be the guy traded, because of Noel's rim protection, that ability? Would Okafor be the biggest chip then?
Possibly. I mean, I think it would depend on, the trade deadline's February 18th. I think it depends on what you can get in return and what you think. I mean, Noel and Saric could play together, certainly possible. Saric is a 4, and Noel will be a 5. Noel could be close to the basket. Again, it's certainly not the offensive player, low-post player that Okafor is. But, depending what you could get, if you can get a third-year shooting guard who could be a 20-point-a-game guy who's really going to help you offensively and is a pretty decent defensive player or something like that, or get a high draft pick or whatever, potentially you could do that. I think Colangelo, just like Hinkie, they'll consider any and all options, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a trade. I don't know that it necessarily would be one of those guys unless somebody meets the Sixers' price.
Yeah, and you wonder if they would at least give it a shot for at least half a year. Go into next year if Embiid is healthy enough to play. Hopefully that would be the case. And then you see if it can work out. And not to mention, I can't imagine Embiid comes back and goes right in playing 32 minutes a night. He's probably going to have to come in and out a lot. So you would almost think that having 3 guys would be an asset that first year.
No, I mean, I agree, definitely. I mean, Embiid, I would be surprised if he's able to play. If he's able to play to start next season, and even if he does, you're right. It's going to be pretty severe minute restriction. I would think 20 or less. So right, you're going to need 2 other guys to handle the bulk of those 96 minutes inside. So whether it's it could be Saric, Embiid, if he can play, and then one of those guys, or it could possibly be all 3 of them. But then you have Saric in the mix too. So if you have 4 guys, that seems like a lot. And if you have other holes, I mean, point guard, shooting guard, even small forward. I mean, at this point, it looks like they're pretty wide open. That if you could address one of those through a big guy and get a draft pick or something like that, I would think that the Sixers would consider that.
Coach Brown last week told me, he said, when you start to think about Embiid and Saric and the possibility of draft picks and the cap space that we'll be able to use, I mean, it almost feels like Brown feels like the light at the end of the tunnel is there. Do you get that sense too? Like he's like, we're almost out of this.
Yeah, I think certainly they have a better chance of getting out of it. And I think, very honestly, Mike, I think with Jerry Colangelo, I think Brett Brown is more involved. I think he's more in the loop with things that happen. So I think, he sort of feels like what he says matters more maybe than it did. And, they could have four first-round picks. They'll probably have three. They'll have at least three. And, depending on the Lakers, if they somehow play better or are unlucky in the lottery, top three protected pick, you could have Sarge coming in, you could have Embiid coming in. That would be a lot of potentially impact players to help kind of move this forward and address some of the many issues that the Sixers have. And he can start, putting a team out there, that is a team that has, quality players or at least young, promising players at all positions and not so many undrafted, hardworking blue-collar guys, but that aren't, NBA starters or maybe even NBA players.
Yeah, we're talking with Tom Moore, Sixers beat writer for Calkins Media. Tom, Embiid, it seems like he's been around more and more. Brett has really commented a lot about his mental change night and day. He looks much better. He commented about the fact that he's grown a couple of inches, but you see him around. Are you starting to feel more confident that that this guy is going to be okay in some capacity?
I mean, you would hope so, just as a basketball person, but. Last year, as I said, he never even got to the point of playing 5-on-5. So, you have a little tiny scaphoid bone in your foot and you weigh 270 pounds and you're running up and down the court. That's a lot of pounding that you put on it. So while I would think things seem a little better, more positive than at this time last year, there's still, a long way to go for him to get to the point. I mean, he's not even really doing full bore basketball drills. He's working with the strength and conditioning coordinator and doing some light dumbbell work and standstill shooting and some very half speed maybe low post drills. I mean he's gonna have to ramp it up quite a bit and then play some 1-on-1 or 2-on-2, 3-on-3 and theoretically get to 5-on-5. I mean it's just it's all you can do at this point. What is hope and take the next step, and if there's no problem, keep going. But I don't think he's going to play this year, regardless. I think that would be foolish when the big picture is just so much more important.
All right, Sixers tomorrow night. They take on the Bulls, and of course you can hear the game here on 97.3 ESPN, and then Saturday against Portland. Tom Moore, Calkins Media. Always a pleasure, Tom. Thanks so much.
Anytime, Mike. Take care.